to today's edition of Pegasus Test. On today's edition, we're going to cover the fighting stance. There are a lot of different ways to stand to get a stable shooting position. And there are lots of schools of thought out there. And I'm going to put out right here that I don't think any of them are wrong, and I don't think any of them are right. Because you have to try them all. You have to decide which one works best for you based on your set of parameters. What I'm going to show you today is what I call the fighting stance, and why it's a fighting stance, what you do with the fighting stance, and how it pertains to your firearms training. Let's define the term fighting stance. This stance is so you can fight, and it does not matter what the weapon is. If I'm going to fight you, okay, we're going fisticuffs. I'm going to get into the stance, and I'm going to use this exact same stance if I have a pistol. And the stance works. This stance also happens to work very well if I have a shotgun or a rifle. Matter of fact, this stance works very well if I'm employing an AT-4. The stance works, and you use it to fight. What are the mechanics of the fighting stance? All right, that is how the fighting stance looks where my feet connect to the ground. What exactly is this? It looks like I'm just standing there. Well, first of all, right here, my knees, they're slightly bent. They're not locked. I'm not standing erect. The second thing is my feet are slightly back, one from the other. I'm right-handed, so my right foot will be slightly back. If you're left-handed, it will be the opposite. By slightly, what I mean, if I were to bring my right side strong foot directly over to my left like this, you can see that my toe is in line with kind of the instep of the foot. Okay, so that's just slightly back and shoulder width apart, slightly over shoulder width for stability. And why do you need that level of stability? I need that level of stability because if I'm in my fighting stance and I'm going with somebody and it gets to where a force is imparted against me either by my assailant or by a projectile or by the recoil of my firearm, I have a way to absorb it. By being crouched down, leaning slightly forward, having my feet shoulder width apart or slightly more, one about a half the length of your foot back from the other, I can absorb those impacts. If it's fighting and he gets me, he doesn't knock me down, I can take the blow. If I've got my firearm with me, okay, I'm firing, the gun's recoiling, I'm absorbing recoil. You can lean back like this, I'm being slightly exaggerated, and actually get a comfortable, easier way to keep your pistol on target and fire. But when I fire it, it starts acting like a lever, and it takes longer for follow-up shots. Whereas if I'm in a fighting stance leaning into the recoil, the gun doesn't move as much as I'm pulling the trigger. This applies to rifles and shotguns as well. There's an old saying, train like you fight, fight like you train. And it's a very true saying, because if you train to a certain way, in the fight, your brain will kick into and go with what it knows. If you've trained yourself to be in this fighting stance, even when you're on the range, you will revert to that under pressure. You will have a method that you have ingrained into yourself for absorbing recoil. You'll have a method that will do you in any type of fight. Let's be honest. Depending on your personal situation, that fight might be a fist fight in a restaurant, if restaurants ever open back up. It might be a gunfight in a tight urban street with your handgun. It could be in a far-off battlefield with a rifle. It could be close up with a shotgun against a large animal who's stalking you instead of you stalking him. But if you always train for the certain thing, that will become a natural position for you to assume. Position in the fight is a luxury. In competition, it's everything and can mean the difference between winning and losing. Out in the fight, it's going to be a luxury, but if you train yourself to that luxury, it'll occur naturally. What are some of the other stances that are available? When I started this video, I said this is the stance I use, but there are others. Let me go over some of the others and what the pros and cons are of them. First one is the isosceles. I take this unloaded firearm. Yes, I'm pointing at the camera, but it's a camera. I think you all know that. My arms are equal. If you look down, you see they form an equal isosceles triangle. And I put my chest here directly towards the threat. The theory behind this stance becoming so popular right now is a lot of people, law enforcement and military, and even some civilians now, are wearing some form of body armor. and it's like, get the armor towards your front. Get that armor towards your front so it can absorb the bullet impact if you get hit, and protect your vital areas, with the chain of thought being that, well, I might take hits in armor, and sometimes taking a hit can take you out of the fight, but you're still going to be alive and recover fairly quickly versus getting full-on shot. That method may work. There's a lot of people that use it, there's a lot of people that like it, and there's a lot of people out there winning competitions with it. It's not my preferred method, but that doesn't make it wrong. Another benefit of the isosceles method is when I'm like this, I can engage threats to my extreme flanks far easier. So it gives me a wide range of movement. Just by swiveling my hips, I can get at least 180 degrees of fire. You know, pretty bad situation if you need a 180 degree arc of fire, but it's good to know that you have it. The next method is called the weaver or the bladed stance, depending on which terminology you want to use. Either is correct. There's slight variations between the two, but they're both essentially the exact same thing. And a lot of that goes into foot and body placement. So let's start from the bottom, work our way up. Okay, foot placement. You notice I have like an L shape going on right here. Okay, my forward, which would be, since I'm a right-handed shooter, my left leg forward is forward and got a more pronounced bent to it than the fighting stance. I'm leaning aggressively towards my threat. This leg is straight back. Also, the foot is out 90 degrees perpendicular to the foot that's facing towards the threat. And facing towards the threat, just like Babe Ruth when he was knocking in his home runs when he was the top dog in the Major League Baseball, my toe is pointing where I want my fire to go. Okay, here in the weaver bladed stance, I've got both hands on the pistol. I'm going to face the camera here like this. Notice that my firing arm is straight and my support arm is bent because I've bladed my body. I'm up on target, and this, with this aggressive forward stance, is very good for controlling recoil. I also find it to be a slightly better accurate stance over isosceles for me, but that's just me. Your results may be different. So this is how your upper body looks. What are the advantages to this position? One of them is stability. More than the fighting stance, you're really aggressively leaning in and bracing yourself, so you're going to absorb recoil from your firearm a lot easier, be that a pistol, a rifle, or shotgun. What are its disadvantages? Lack of maneuverability, i.e., when you got threats coming from multiple angles, your ability to deal with them is going to be more severely restricted due to the biomechanics of your body. When I swing to my left side or my weak hand side, I have less range of motion. I can go about 45 degrees versus the 90 or plus that I could go with the isosceles that I demonstrated earlier in the video. But when I swing to the other side, I get the full 90 off to my strong side. So one way I have good coverage, the other way I have a lot less. That may or may not be important to you. What I suggest is that I have shown 3 techniques in this video. The fighting stance is my favorite technique because it has almost universal applicability to any type of fighting I might get into. But that doesn't make it the only solution for you. The isosceles method has a lot going for it, especially if wearing armor is a consistent thing in your preparations of where you'll think you'll encounter a fight. The bladed method has stability and accuracy going for it, and hopefully some self-protection as you blade yourself depending on your body form. The disadvantage is if you wear armor, now your armor is off threat and a significant amount of your body, unless you're wearing side plates, has been opened up to enemy fire. We hope you found this video helpful and informative. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and tune in for future videos on firearms techniques.